So like Chris said, my name is Greg, and I am the youth director here at Brazos Fellowship, and I've been here for about 4 years now. It's been absolutely incredible, so much fun. And so the other thing is I'm married, so I have a beautiful wife. She's back there. Her name's Brandy. So everybody turn around and say, hi, Brandy. So she's going to hate me for that because she hates attention. I'm actually really surprised she's out here. She's usually up in the booth. Anyway, so I've been married for 3 years this December, so she's absolutely incredible. Speaking of incredible things, though, 242. Man, I love 242 so much, and it's really had a special place in my heart because, like Chris said, so I was involved before 242 even existed. I was pre-242 in Chris's living room. And one of the reasons why I really love 242, though, was really because this was the first place that I found authentic community. And I said that was about 6 years ago, so it's been a long time. But it's just really an honor getting to speak with y'all, just because it has a special place in my heart. So I want to start tonight off with the question. How many of y'all have heard of the term GOAT? Raise your hand. Heard of the term GOAT. Now, I'm pretty sure there's probably someone in here, they're like, oh, well, duh, Greg, it's that little furry animal that with the horns like walking around, right? First off, I don't know why I talked like that. That was kind of weird. But anyways, second of all, though, that's not what I'm talking about, okay? So I'm talking about the term GOAT, which means greatest of all time. Exactly. Thing is, what's crazy about that, though? It's how quickly things can go from the absolute greatest to the absolute worst in our minds. So think about it. Maybe it was a song that was playing, 6 months ago, and they just played it on the radio over and over and over again, right? But when it first came out, you're like, oh man, this is my jam. Yes, like you turn it up. But now when it comes on, you're like, oh my gosh, this is the worst. And you just like open the car door and just like roll out, right? Like, yeah. And so that's basically how I am with like any Drake song ever. Because, it's super popular at first, and then they just play it over and over and over again. What about Pokemon Go? Do y'all remember Pokemon Go? Is there anybody in this room that still plays Pokemon Go? Own it. Come on, own it. All right, so that was a crazy time, right? There were people, adults to little kids, just running around the city trying to collect all these Pokemon. And it was kind of weird. I played it for a little bit, but then I got lazy and I liked laying in bed playing games on my phone, right? I don't want to actually get up to play my game. What about Vine? Do y'all remember Vine? Or am I too old for that? Maybe? Okay, so Vine was absolutely incredible. I absolutely loved it, right? It's like, do it for the Vine. It's just short little clips of people doing stupid stuff most of the time. I loved it. But thing is, so Pokemon Go and Vine, they were the greatest at one point. But now they're, dead, essentially, right? Like nobody ever talks about it. The thing is, what I'm really talking about tonight, though, is value, okay? The value of something, how much it's worth to us, it changes really quickly. So we're just as quick to do the same thing with ourselves, though. For most of us, there are times when we feel like we're doing pretty well in life, things are going great, and our value goes up. For me, that happens when I get a new haircut. Okay, so I got one today. Yeah, looks pretty good. I like it. Thank you. And so when I get a new haircut, man, I feel amazing. And I usually, get my phone out, take a selfie, like, oh yeah, like looking good. And I send it to my wife, be like, hey baby, how you doing, right? She's like, oh my gosh, I married an idiot. Well, you're stuck with me. Sorry, Brandy. But she's used to it. So maybe it's not a haircut. Maybe it's for you, it's shoes, right? You get a new pair of shoes and you're like, yes, like I'm feeling good right now. And I don't care if you're a guy or a girl, if you get a new pair of shoes, you're feeling like on top of the world, right? I know everybody's looking at my shoes, right? They're new. I love it. But what's even better, though, is when somebody compliments your shoes, right? And you're like, oh, yes, like my value goes way up instantly, okay? Maybe for you, it has nothing to do with your appearance, but it has to do with what you actually do. So maybe you feel great when you get a bunch of likes and comments on Instagram. Maybe you feel great whenever you made a good grade. Or you got that text from that one guy or girl that you like, and then now you're one step closer to ring before spring, right? I know. Or maybe you got into the major you wanted. Or maybe you just simply got a ton of attention for doing something, right? And just as fast as we feel great about ourselves, the opposite can happen too. So maybe you feel like your value drops when you find out that that guy or girl who texted you was really just asking for class notes and they have no interest in you. Yeah, that sucks. Or maybe you failed another class and now you're on academic probation. I've been there. I get it. Or maybe you hooked up with your boyfriend or girlfriend again after you promised yourself that it wouldn't happen. Or maybe you went to that website again and the last time it happened, you said it was the last time. The point is, though, for a lot of us, our greatness and our value, it's fragile. It can change quickly, and it's usually associated with what other people think about you or what you think about you. So your value goes up or down based on every move you make. And even though we know that that's probably not a great thing for most of us, it's still true, and maybe even more true than we want to admit. And it creates this constant sense of trying to not mess up. And then that's when all the stress and anxiety starts flooding in, and we find ourselves asking questions like, what if no one likes me? What if I can't do this whole college thing and I can't graduate? What if I don't get into the organization or major I want? What if I don't get that internship? Or what if I can't find a job after I graduate and then I can't even support myself? And you're just constantly saying, what if, what if, what if? And those what ifs feel like a bigger deal because we're not just talking about a bad performance or a no performance. It starts becoming who you are or who you aren't. And so we spend most of our days stressed out and worn out. We live with a sense of being on edge constantly because at any moment we can go from a very high value to nothing. And so most of us don't talk about it, but that's reality. So the question is, can you really do anything about that? Even if we know it's not the best, is that just simply the way life is? And so today I want to talk about a time Jesus was talking to the Pharisees, and we're going to be looking at Luke chapter 15, and it'll be up on the screen here. And so we're going to pick it up, Luke 15, verse 1 and 2. And it says this, "Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, 'This man welcomes sinners and eats with them.'" So before we go further, I want to really stop and pay attention to who's there, okay? So the Pharisees were the law experts. They weren't exactly fans of Jesus either. And they're kind of annoyed because of who else is there, tax collectors and sinners. See, tax collectors and sinners, they weren't just your average people who made some poor decisions. You see, they were known by everyone for being the bad people in society. They had the lowest value in that time. And there they are listening to Jesus with the most respected people of those days, the Pharisees. And so I think one of the reasons Luke wanted to document this moment is just how crazy this scene actually was. You see, the good guys and the bad guys, they never hung out together. They didn't want to associate with each other, yet there they were. And so we're going to pick it back up in verse 3, in Luke 15, verse 3. And it says this, "Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, 'Rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep.'" And so Jesus did this a lot. He would stop and just kind of start telling a story to help explain to people what God was really like. And so Jesus was basically saying, if a sheep gets in trouble, a good shepherd goes after it. I mean, that sounds like a pretty good shepherd, right? But the crazy thing is, that's not true. That's not true, because think about it. If the shepherd leaves the 99 to go after one, and he just leaves 99 sheep wandering around by themselves, unsupervised, I'm pretty sure that shepherd would get fired really fast. I mean, that's not a good shepherd, because chances are better that a shepherd would just cut his losses with that one sheep and just keep a better eye on the 99 and not lose anymore, right? Like, that would make more sense. And so when Jesus suggested this, it definitely caught the attention of the crowd. And so we're going to continue on in verse 7, and it says this, I tell you that in the same way, there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent. So in other words, this isn't really a story about sheep, is it? It's about God and people. It's about Pharisees and the sinners. No one would have been confused about who Jesus was talking about in the story. See, the Pharisees were the good sheep. The sinners and tax collectors were the sheep who ran off. They were the bad performers. And while Jesus was in front of both groups, he told a story about a shepherd who cared about both groups so much. The good shepherd wasn't satisfied with just staying with the good sheep and letting the not so smart ones wander off and get what they deserve for leaving. No, he went after that wandering sheep. And my question is, why? Like, why? It's because of this, because the value of the sheep had nothing to do with whether it stayed close or wandered off. That sheep mattered because it belonged to the shepherd. In other words, a sheep's value doesn't come from what it does. A sheep's value comes simply from being a sheep. See, your performance, what you do, how you behave, how other people see you, all that stuff that you think gives you high or low value, it doesn't matter. It doesn't. Because your value doesn't change because your value doesn't come from what you do. I want to repeat that again. Your value doesn't change because your value doesn't come from what you do. Now, it doesn't mean that the things that we do, like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't study, we shouldn't work hard, we shouldn't try, right? All of those things will make your life better. So I'm not saying, hey, just forget everything because that doesn't matter. I'm not saying that. All those things will make your life better, but get this, and this is what I really want you to listen to. It'll make your life better, but it doesn't make you better. See, your value won't change because your value never came from those things in the first place. It's not about performance. It's not about what you're doing or not doing. It's not about your failure because your value doesn't relate to your performance. And if we could really get this, I think it could really change so much about our lives. See, look at the greatest commandment. The thing that Jesus said that mattered more than anything else. He said what? He said to love God and then love your neighbor as you love yourself, right? And so Jesus connects our ability to love God and to love others to our ability to love ourselves. And so this may sound strange, but you know this already. You really do. Because you can't love others well if you don't like you. If you're in a bad place personally and you just look in the mirror every morning and you just don't like what you're looking at, it's really hard to go out and love people, isn't it? Because you can't put others first if you're constantly focusing on yourself, trying to perform well, and trying to raise your own value. It's pretty much impossible. And so when you know that you are valuable and understand that your performance doesn't change that value, that's when you stop feeling worthless. See, when you know that the shepherd thinks you're worth it, it frees you up to stop managing your own value and to start loving people. So for a lot of us, we swing from feeling okay to worthless, to okay to worthless, back and forth, multiple times a day even, depending on what happens during that day. And we find our value in those things. And that's how life has been for so long that it just feels normal. But I want you to know that you don't have to feel like your value rises and falls all day long. And tonight I'm here to tell you that you don't have to wonder about your worth because you can know that you are valuable. And I don't know where you are right now in your walk. I don't know where you were whenever you walked in here. You may have been on top of the world, or maybe it was a struggle for you to get off the couch to get over here because you're just not feeling it, right? And so I want you to know that you are valuable, and your value has nothing to do with your performance. And so as we start kind of wrapping up tonight, man, I really want you to start imagining what would it look like or what would it feel like if you really knew your value didn't change whether you got the date or you got dumped, you passed the class or you failed the class, you got the job or got passed up, you're set to graduate or you're going to be here an extra semester, you have a ton of friends or you feel like you're all alone. What would it look like if all that stuff didn't matter? Because you didn't find your value in that stuff, but instead you found your value in the one who created you. What would that look like if you woke up every morning knowing that your value came from the one who created you rather than all the stuff that you're trying to accomplish throughout your life? And I want you to hear this. I'm not saying, hey, nothing you do in your life matters. But I want you to know that what you do in your life doesn't have anything to do with the value that God places on you. And I think for so many of us that are walking in here tonight, y'all draw a line and y'all make a connection between your performance and how God sees you. And that's not true. Because I want to tell you that there's a God that loves you right where you are, and He's relentless in His pursuit of a relationship with you. And He longs to have this relationship with you through His Son, Jesus. Like I said, I don't know where you were whenever you walked in here, but I really do hope and pray that you will walk out of here knowing that your value comes from the one who created you, not in the stuff that you do. Let's pray.